everyone, welcome to another Table Talk. I'm your host, Jake Combs, and tonight we're going to be looking at the Lord of the Rings battle in Balin's tomb. I actually just barely watched the Fellowship of the Ring for really the first time in, I'd say, close to a year, and was literally watching this scene of the movie when this game was actually announced as something that was coming. So this game is currently on pre-order. It will be available this Saturday, and so was provided by Games Workshop for the purpose of our review. And so we're going to go ahead and get this open after I have a little drink of my tea. All right. So this is a standalone board game. At least that's how it looks on the back. I haven't done much research as far as the gameplay itself or how it's played or anything like that. With this being kind of the board game format, I would suspect that this might be one of the bookstore exclusives, like they did with the ones that we did last week with Bladeborn and such. But I'm not certain there, especially since on the back it doesn't say anything about like Barnes & Noble. Now, inside we do have 3 individual sprues. We have the blue one for the heroes. We have the gray one for the cave troll. And also, I actually didn't notice this at first, but with the heroes you do have the ring, which I'm sure is going to come into play at some point. And then some of our Lord of the Rings style orcs. We have our assembly guide, which is a single sheet. We have our bag of bases, which most of them are slotted, which matches the models. And then the biggest one, which is for the cave troll, is one of the ones that has the dots for posts, which matches those models, so you're not having to do any customization there. We have a bag of 6 dice, 3 blue, 2 red, and 1 gray. These dice are definitely not your typical, 1 through 6 D6, but they each have different symbols, which I'm assuming, depending on which you roll, are going to affect whether you hit the enemy or things like that. We have our deck of cards, which we're going to open in just a minute, and then we have in here is our board as well as our rule book and some tokens. So we're going to go ahead and open that up. Alright, so the token's quite simple, just the number 1 on both sides. I'm guessing that those are probably some sort of like wound counter. Alright, so the board is done very similar to like a Blood Bowl board, where you have a grid and about 1 each squares, but they're not fully drawn out. It's just kind of the plus sign where the squares meet. But it does have a lot of detail in here. We have some of the dead dwarf bodies. With these spots right here, I'm assuming that these are our starting points for the heroes, as well as right here for Gimli. And then we have our red boxes, which I'm assuming are for each of the orcs, and then we have the bigger red box with a white box inside that is for the troll. So I'm assuming that's where each of these start. And then we have a counter up to 12 at the very top, the very bottom of the board. It kind of looks a little bit misleading, since we have the brand, which would be presumably at the top of the board, but then these numbers are facing the other direction. So not really sure the logic there. My guess is maybe because you're gonna have some people sitting across from each other, that way, like each direction, it still is kind of a top of the board in respect to them. Now we have our instructions, which looks like it is 7 total pages, 8 if you include the backside. Now, right away, one thing I noticed is the quality of the images. Full color photos are always the way to go, especially with a tabletop game, because there's gonna be a lot less ambiguity as far as, like, which dice are they referring to in the picture. If you were only doing one color, it'd be a lot harder to identify. And then with the miniatures, in the images you see them just as their individual color plastic, as well as what they could look like painted. So definitely great production value there. Looking at the rules, there's not a lot to the rules from what I can see. So it looks like the counter up to 12, those are the number of turns, and on each turn there are a number of goblin cards that are applied, which my guess is with each goblin card that's applied is the number of goblins that are going to be or potentially the number of goblins rather that would be on the board. But definitely looks very cool. I like the board format, the detail of the rule book. Now, looking at the miniatures themselves, with this being a board game, this is some of the more durable plastic, like what we saw with the Barnes & Noble games. So there's not as much detail as you would get with the normal plastic that you get from GW Miniatures, but there still is a significant amount of detail, especially like on the troll there. Looking at the orcs, there still is a good amount of detail. You can definitely get creative with some of your colors if you're painting these guys up. Now, the great thing about them being different colors right off the sprue means that it's going to be a lot easier to identify, if one's a hero or one's a villain when you're playing for somebody that's not going to paint. But that would be more for people that are not familiar with the Lord of the Rings movies, especially this particular one. But definitely looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to giving this game a try. And definitely going to do a little bit more research, find out if this is going to be something that's available everywhere or if it's something that's only available at like exclusive bookstores, something like that. And then when we do our written review, that information will be provided there for you. Which, as always, when we do our written reviews, you will find those at nerdcultonline.com. So be sure to check those out. I would expect that we'll probably have the review for this probably within a week or two. Not in a significant number of models, and I actually forgot to open the cards, so let's go ahead and crack those open. All right, so the first few cards excuse me, are models with the number of attack dice, defend dice, wounds, their movement, and same goes with the goblins as well. On the back, it just says character card. And then the rest of these are goblin cards. So like one of them is Drums in the Deep. The goblin player places any one Moria goblin next to the well. Now, looking at this, it looks like you have one player is going to be taking care of the heroes, and the other player is going to be taking care of the goblins. So it's going to be less of a cooperative game, but it does say it's for 2 or more players. So that means, depending on how many players you have, you're going to divide those roles up. So, like, if you have 3 players, you could have 1 be the orcs, and then the other 2 be the split between the heroes. Or you could do, one player doing all the heroes and then splitting between the orcs, something like that. And then with another goblin card, we have goblin reinforcements. The goblin player places any 2 Moria goblins in the entrance to Balin's tomb, and it does have a picture to show you exactly what it's talking about, so that it gets rid of any ambiguity for sure. So, definitely right off the bat, first impression is excellent production value. The attention to detail in the cards in the rulebook are top notch, absolutely. Especially since with the cards themselves showing pictures of exactly what part of the board it's referring to, will make it much easier to play and understand those rules. So definitely kudos there. But that is it for this episode. Thank you guys as always for watching, and I hope you have a good night. Thank you.